Welcome, traveling circus folk, unlucky film editors, and the dehydrated, to episode 469 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 29th of November 2022, and featuring Torchwood from Out of the Rain, written by Peter J. Hammond, and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper, Bern Gorman as Owen Harper, Naoko Mori as Toshiko Sato, and Gareth David-Lloyd as Yanto Jones. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I'm getting sick and tired of Yono's Terra Pokemon. With me are color commentator Alex Fireheart.
Hello.
And technical director Mad Matt Winchell, back after a while.
The rumors of my death are highly exaggerated.
Co-host Randy Ronson McCulloch is out for the evening due to, I believe, technical issues, possibly influenced by other things, but tech is the only thing I'm aware of.
I believe so, yes.
So how has your month been, Matt?
Busy. I basically got told straight up at work that I can't get a bunch of Saturdays off in a row until we get more people in there. To which I'm like, the heck, I work here like 4 to 5 nights in a week. How can you not give me like one day every week? We have like 4 other people that can fill in for me. That one day.
So, I know from fast food, my experience is that a lot of people, especially people with kids, always request to have both Saturday and Sunday off. And sometimes there's a negotiation involved because obviously everybody can't have weekends off. I don't know if they're prioritizing other people over you, or if there's just literally a lack of people who are even available Saturdays.
I wouldn't think... Well, I know for a fact I've seen at least 2 of the other closers who recently moved up to being closers that have worked weekends and can work weekends, and matter of fact, live as close, if not closer than I do.
You haven't threatened to quit if they schedule you on a Saturday. Somebody else may have.
Maybe. I highly doubt it, but that's a maybe. But at the same time, I'm kind of on borrowed time at this point. My family situation has further escalated.
So, I
So,
forgot about that until you mentioned that.
the sounds of it sounds like we will be here until at the very least early spring, and then jumping ship ASAP.
Gotcha.
I'm still not sure.
Have you said anything to anybody at work yet, or are you keeping that quiet?
I've been telling the people that I feel I can trust as much information as I am willing to give.
That's fair. That's fair.
Some of them I'm like, you're too young, you don't need to go through this BS, and others I'm like, you've had a lot of experience with this too.
Although I guess you're in a situation like it sounds like they're not going to be like, well, we might as well fire Matt because it sounds like they really need you, but you never know.
I'm very much a position that they are hard to fill, apparently. Not only that, but I also do more than my fair share of filling in when other people call in.
If management is bad enough, they might be like, might as well screw Matt over. He can't do it. He can't threaten to lawyer up because he'll be moving soon. Which hopefully you don't work with anyone like that, but you never know.
I would hope not, but that's a wait and see kind of thing at this point.
Right.
At the same time, I feel safe in saying that I think even if someone did try to pull that, there are other people there who would undermine that.
Gotcha, that's good.
So, that's highly unlikely, but again, a wait and see kind of situation. That being said, anywhere that I've been hearing that my mother has been looking to move to is going to have better job opportunities than I ever had in this little town.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although you mentioning undermining me gives me flashbacks of times when, and I'm definitely not saying any names, But there have been times when I was the assistant manager and other people were managers, and somebody would come up to me, "Oh, why did I get paid for such and such?" I'd be like, "Well, apparently the day that payroll was entered, 6 hours were taken off of your time clock. So if that's not correct, you might want to talk to the big boss." And at that point, I was out of it, but I shared the appropriate information.
Right. Outside of that, yeah, I had to fill in like at least it had to have been 2 times in the last week, so that became an 8-day run. Um, I have threatened that I'm not picking up any more extras for the next 2 weeks. I did get a call, but thankfully
Mm-hmm.
by the time I found out I had gotten a call, they actually called back and said, "Oh, never mind, we found somebody else anyways." Thank you though.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. Both
How does that
dodged.
bode for Tuesdays?
Actually, I think I got another Tuesday coming up. Not too far off, I believe. See, I got today. No, I take that back. I keep forgetting that those are blank because that's the first week from last month.
Gotcha.
Currently, 7 to close, 5 to close. Yeah, I'm not getting any Tuesdays off yet next
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
Honestly, the most days I have off in a week are usually like Mondays and Fridays.
Mm,
I have been trying to push the idea, at least by my D&D group, that we should move to one of those days, but nothing's really budged on that yet.
fair.
But I would have had at least 3 Fridays off last month if it wasn't for the fact that I got called in for one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's unusual to have Fridays off, which I'm kind of happy for, because if things get back to normal-ish soon, that usually means my mother will bring home food if she feels up to it.
Okay.
And that's all. That's the other thing too, is moving out here will have more food options again, without having to drag it across multiple towns to get here, or to get it home. Um, Other than that, I did have quite a list of stuff I was also playing in the background for the last couple of weeks, which I'll discuss some of it in a bit. I got through a game that I plan to play again later, so I'll hold off on that review. And I'm playing another game right now that I've already beaten. Actually, I'm playing a couple other games I've already beaten. I'm playing the PC version of Legacy of Kain Blood Omen, which I've only played the PlayStation 1 version of. And that's been actually going fairly well now that I got back into it again just recently. And I've also, because it was given to me for free from another fellow content creator, I got Fallout New Vegas for GOG, and it actually works really well so far.
That's good.
Yeah. Leave it to good old games to actually fix Bethesda's shit. That's my number one issue with Bethesda, outside of the more recent stuff. Which, again, this is not a game news podcast, so I'm not going to go into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
All right.
been very busy one way or another.
Right. So Alex, how have you been this week?
Not too bad. God, yeah, most of it's basically just been playing Pokemon and all that, and I will say something that I did not realize until like yesterday was that I apparently got my first payout from Twitch 2 weeks ago. Which was
Okay.
like, oh.
Oh, that's the
I
other thing,
mean,
too. I also bought all my Christmas gifts, or at least for my family.
Mm.
oh, nice. Of course, it's funny. I've definitely noticed that since going back to work, my sleep schedule is going to shit again, which is kind of annoying because I'd had it like relatively under control, and it's not like, aside from today, it didn't go completely back to where it was. But But yeah, it's just like, oh god damn it. It almost feels like I'm gonna have to do a thing where like at some point I just, even if I don't like turn my PC off completely at a certain time of night, I just have to like close Discord because I feel like at least twice the problem has been that I got into a conversation on Discord and it's just like gone for hours and I'm like, oh shit.
Like all the times when I like, oh yeah, I should go to sleep. It's 2 a.m. and then I would end up talking to you for 4 hours.
Y'all need to learn some self-control.
To be fair, I only let myself do that if it's during a break from school. I don't do that during a regular school week.
I think that would have been Sunday into Monday. Yeah, so Monday would have been my first day off. Finally, yeah, this is by the way day 2 of 2 off. Finally, I believe it was Sunday night into Monday morning. I started playing Legacy of Kain Blood Omen again. That was when I first got back into it and started playing some more. Suddenly realized not only had like at least more than an hour passed, but then when I looked down at the time, it's like it's 5 a.m. Oh shoot! I need to be in bed already. Went to bed, got up at around 8:30, had a cinnamon roll, watched some YouTube, and I believe took an afternoon nap, got back up. Actually, no, just managed to stay awake, had lunch, had an afternoon nap after lunch, and then got up again and this has been a weird day. This just goes about go about my business.
So let's see. So speaking of sleep, my biggest issue has been that with the temperature changing, I alternate between, oh, I'm sleepy because it's cooler in here, to, oh, the heat is on high because everybody in my building's asleep, so the boiler's working hard, and it's so warm that I can't sleep even with the window open, which kept me up until 6, 7 a.m. a couple of times because I just could not sleep. It was too warm. Um, Luckily, not a major impact, but it definitely has screwed up my sleep schedule for however stable it ever is. Um, I would talk about Pokemon, but I'm delaying that until Geek Talk. Otherwise, it's the end of my semester, so I'm enjoying my work kind of winding down. I do have some papers I need to write. Um, but at least I don't have so many different things coming from different directions at me. Uh, Although it does mean that I wrap up with my current students, so it'll be my first time from a major class doing that. Anything else new on my end? I don't think so. Oh yeah, I was going to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, except the Disney Plus account I've been using apparently got canceled this week, or like last week. So I need to decide if I'm willing to pay for my own Disney Plus account, or if I can afford to, I should say, or if I'm just going to be without Disney Plus for a while. But that is about it on my end. Okay, so on tonight's show, we've got some birthdays and news. We've got Geek Talk. We have some reviews of Shame. And then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and ratings. So kicking off the birthdays, we've got Michelle Gomez, who played Missy from 2014 to 2016, who turned 56 on November 23rd, Doctor Who Day. So I guess she has a good celebration for her birthday every year now. Philippa Coulthard, who played Georgie in K9, turned 30 on the 25th. I don't know why I keep saying the day last, but that's because I haven't done birthdays in a while. Also on the 25th, April from Class turned 32. On the 27th, Verity Lambert, who produced Doctor Who from 1963 to 1965 and was the very first producer for the show, would have been 87, but died in 2007 at the age of 71. Also on the 27th, Johnny Byrne, who was a writer and script editor from 1981 to 1983, would have been 87, but died in 2008 at the age of 72. Yesterday, Karen Gillan, who played Amy Pond from 2010 to 2012, although she might be better known as Nebula nowadays, turned 35. And, oh wait, I forgot my own age for a second. I was like, wait, does that make her the same age as me? No, it made her the same age as me for about just under 3 months each year, I guess. And finally, today, Naoko Mori, who played Toshiko Sato in the first 2 seasons of Torchwood, turned 51. And Michael Craze, who played Ben Jackson from 1966 to 1967, would have been 80, but he died in 1998 at 56. So happy birthday, Michelle, Philippa, Sophie, Verity, Johnny, Karen, Naoko, and Michael. It's been real quiet. I am still on the call, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
not used to this much quiet when I'm talking unless the call crashed.
It's quite the list.
Yeah, yes. Moving on to Doctor Who news. A few weeks ago, we mentioned that damn it, I was so focused on his actor. William Russell had been submitted to the Guinness Book of World Records as a potential new record holder for the longest gap between TV appearances of a character played by the same actor. So he now officially has the record for based on his appearance as Ian Chesterton in The Power of the Doctor, which of course was this year.
Mm-hmm.
He first played Chesterfield, of course, in 1963 in An Unearthly Child. Stayed with the show for 77 episodes, leaving in the Chase, which made the 26th of June 1965 Chesseldorf's last appearance. And he has not actually been physically on the show for 57 years, 120 days until his return in Power of the Daleks, which was on the 23rd of October. Also, did you know that there is not any official list of all the names the First Doctor has called Ian? Which is what I was looking for when I was trying to put that bit together. The previous record holder was Philip Lowry in the role of Dennis Tanner in Coronation Street, who had returned to the role after 43 years. Another Guinness World Record Doctor Who holds is the most consecutive sci-fi TV episodes with 871 episodes so far. They say so far. I'm guessing that doesn't mean both shows together, but so I'm guessing that ends in 1986. But I would have to double check that.
But yeah, someone gets an achievement for 40 years, and William Russell's just like, hold my tea.
Yep.
Yeah.
57-year hat trick. Boom.
Yep. Now we just there's a few actors that are still alive who could who could wait until they've surpassed that and come back. Especially the ones who played younger characters in the 60s. I mean, he wasn't an old character, but he was an adult as compared to some of the ones who played teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
As far as that, like, most consecutive sci-fi episodes, the article is including New Who, but the record only counts classic.
Okay.
So it's 6. So the record is 694.
Got you. So maybe whoever wrote the article didn't fact check properly.
Most possibly.
Because I was gonna say,
Also,
for it to be consecutive, it would have to be
Right, right. Like how I would not think a hiatus of that length counts as consecutive episodes.
No.
I would almost wonder if the hiatus before Trial of a Time Lord even broke the string.
Well, the show wasn't canceled, so I don't
Fair.
know. That's kind of gray area.
All right. In
Almost
other
canceled.
news, we have some spin-off news, and it would be a bit bigger if we were a UK-based podcast, but we're not, and I'm not entirely sure whether or not any of our listeners are UK-based. Let us know. But as of yesterday, the Sarah Jane, or 2 days, I don't know, as of this week, the Sarah Jane Adventures is now available on BBC iPlayer for all, BBC license payers to watch. So I don't know if it was on. I don't even know if HBO Max is in the UK. I'm not entirely sure what its status was before that, but it's definitely available to everybody who watches British TV now. But again, doesn't really apply to either those of us on this side of the Atlantic or on Alex's side of the Pacific. Moving on to our big Finish news. On the 23rd of November, was released the 9th Doctor Adventures Hidden Depths with Christopher Eccleston. And on the 24th of November, was released Torchwood, the Lincolnshire Poacher, with Garrett David-Lloyd. I feel like I didn't pronounce that right. Gareth David-Lloyd, if that's not what I said. I feel like I heard myself put an extra D in there. So those are our Torchwood releases for anniversary week. And our final bit of news/rumor, and Ron is the one who put this together, so I'm guessing he looked a bit more deeply into this, so apologies for not necessarily being clear on it. But I'm seeing that the Mirror reports that the Cybermen and the Daleks are going to get spin-off series because of the extra budget from Doctor Who, as part of RTD's plans to have spin-offs the way that he did earlier on. I'm guessing if I were to scroll down this article, which I'm scrolling through now, we would find that the only source is an unnamed, job not mentioned television insider, or perhaps even less of a source, just because that tends to be the case when we stick Mirror and Sun articles under the rumor mill.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as far as I'm concerned, let me go get the bucket of salt that we used to grit the path. You're gonna need that, because I'm not entirely sure whether or not to believe that.
I do see that they said the BBC is not commenting.
I would hope that if Russell is going to stick his neck out to do something like that he doesn't overextend it again.
I would assume this will be a matter of either he'll have oversight, but otherwise will from the get-go not be directly involved. If anything like this happened anyway.
So you're saying it would be like when Chibnall was basically in charge of Torchwood?
Yeah.
But I did
whoever was in charge of
quote.
Sarah Jane Adventures was in charge of it, sort of a thing.
So the exact quote is, a source, not even necessarily a BBC insider, just a source, told the Mirror, fans can expect to see Centaurans, Weeping Angels, and Sea Devils in separate series showing what they get up to and the Doctor isn't there to stop them, along with Daleks and Cybermen. Now, that could mean a lot of things, because if you said, if you changed that to say Slitheen, Jadoon, and Centaurans, you would be describing the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that does not mean that they're getting their own spin-off shows. It
Mm,
means that if there are spin-off shows, they will be there and the Doctor won't.
yeah. I mean,
But
it
a
would not.
source could literally mean, you know, somebody on
Mm.
one side of the mirror building calls the anonymous hotline tip on the other side of the mirror building. So,
Yeah. I it's one of those things where with given uh Disney's got like all these Marvel shows and Star Wars shows and all that. I could see them being like, well, if we're gonna have you on our platform, you're gonna have to give us more than just the main show. So I could see them fronting the money to be like, okay, give us some spin-off shit as well. Like whether it'll
maybe.
actually happen or not is to be seen, but I could legitimately see from a business standpoint Disney being like, well, we need to be getting more out of this than just the main show. Give us some spin-off stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's literally all the information we have now.
Mm.
So if you hear anybody like the headline to this Mirror article trying to extrapolate and take it to extremes, Matt said it right about the salt. Oh, that reminds me,
Enough to grit the entire driveway.
I I really better order some ice melt off of Amazon because I already know that my sidewalks are going to be shit next time it snows. All right. Moving on to Geek Talk. So I'll start with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Alex has said they don't plan to talk about it today, but if you want to chime in or comment on anything I say, feel free.
Mm-hmm.
So I have watched 2 Let's Plays of Scarlet and I'm in the process of playing Violet myself. So on one hand, I know the story. On the other hand, there will probably be at least some visual differences and possible other minor surprises in what I experience. Um, so talking generally, not even about my experience yet. So people are talking about large amounts of glitches in the game. And I've been trying to, I'm a scientist. I try to figure out why it's happening for some people and why not for other people. At first, I thought that it was the day one patch that might have broken the game, but I couldn't find enough people who could even say whether or not they had the day one patch. I think it's only people who, got it really early that would even see it downloaded. Um, but what I have found is 2 things. One is that a lot of it is caused or exacerbated by a memory leak. So people who
Yes.
marathon game for like 4 hours or more at a time are probably the ones seeing huge amounts of glitches. Whereas if you just save and restart, save, fully close out of the game, not just black the screen, and then reopen it every hour, you're probably not going to see many glitches. Another thing is that allegedly moving it if you save games by default to the SD card, moving it from the SD card to your Switch storage apparently fixes either fixes or decreases the amount of memory leak. Obviously, there should still be a patch for that at some point because other games don't have that problem with the SD card. But if you're having a problem with this game, apparently that is a way to decrease the problem. So if you do both of those things, you probably will see very few glitches. I personally have not seen any glitches, and I've played for more than an hour at a time. But I didn't even put my SD card into my Switch yet because I only have 2 games on it. That said, from what I've seen, this definitely seems to be the most in-depth story in terms of character development, plot, and all of those things that Pokemon has ever had. I know that some of the games, like the Coliseum games, have had decent plots, but they were on GameCube. They had some limitations, and they didn't have the budget of a main series Pokemon game, even if the budget for a Pokemon game is not as much as some people seem to think that it is. But this definitely very solid plot, very solid character development. You definitely, in my experience, find yourself enjoying the characters by the end. Um, and they have representation of different types of players in there, which is cool. Um, that's about as much as I'm probably about as much as I'm willing to say, without that wouldn't spoil anything. As
Mm.
to my own personal experience, I decided that this would be the first game that I try straight off as a Nuzlocke. So, if you're not familiar with what a Nuzlocke is, it's sometimes called, it was originally called Pokemon Hard Mode. It's basically one, you're limited to one encounter per route, and two, permadeath. Any Pokemon that gets knocked out is dead, period. There's a few other minor rules. There's also what's called a hardcore Nuzlocke, which is no items in battle and no leveling over the level cap of the next gym leader. Now, I'm not doing a hardcore Nuzlocke, but I'm not doing a hardcore Nuzlocke. I usually don't like to use items in battle anyway, because you can't do it in competitive, so I feel like that's giving myself... And because the NPCs usually don't have them. So I usually feel like it's cheating. Anything that the NPCs can't do that I'm doing feels like I'm cheating. However, I've noticed if you try, if you're only doing one of the three stories, it might be easy to not overlevel, technically. But for example, the second Titan, no, sorry, the first of the evil team bosses is a higher level than the third gym leader. So it's impossible to kind of follow that perfectly, especially without looking ahead and looking at everybody's levels, which I'm not doing. So I'm just kind of leveling a little bit each time. That said, I'm definitely experiencing difficulty with the new Terra mechanic. Is definitely kicking my ass in the sense that I've wiped to the third gym leader twice now. And the second time I went in, the first time I was underleveled or just exactly on level. The second time I was overleveled. So what's been advised to me is a lot of the competitive items that you normally only see in the post game are on sale during the main game, and some of them don't break the way they used to. You can actually use them in multiple battles. They just break once per battle and come back at the end of the battle. So I think I'm going to buy some competitive items and give it a third try. If I fail a third try and I have competitive items, I might just decide I don't have the skill for the challenge I've taken on, and I might lower the difficulty level. But that's where I've gotten. I've wiped at the third gym leader twice, which is disappointing because I had a good, I had some Pokemon that had good new evolutions that I wanted to have on my team, and then I ended up getting stomped. That's it on my thoughts for that, unless Alex wanted to respond to any of that, or unless... I don't think Matt's been playing it, right?
I've not been playing it. I've just been seeing the constant news of bugs.
Got you.
Bugs everywhere.
Yeah. But if you notice, some people get nonstop bugs and some people get none at all. So that's why I that's why I felt that there was a way to figure out why.
That honestly seems to be the story of a lot of games that have a huge amount of bugs. Is that some people never see them at all and get really lucky, meanwhile other people will just be bombarded from minute 10.
Yeah. Although I have seen people say, "Oh, I got a bug 10 minutes in," and then they showed a scene that you have to play for 45 minutes to even get to that scene, even if you're skipping cutscenes. So I was like, "Yeah, that wasn't 10 minutes in."
Yeah. I think I think the only glitches or whatever that I've really experienced are one, I've seen Pokemon spawn in walls and cliffs and that, which is kind of funny.
Most unintentional funny thing about it, that's technically not a bug. Civilians just walking through the middle of a Pokemon battle. Yeah. Especially when they somehow manage to time it just right to be right in front of a Pokemon that's about to get hit, so it looks like the human gets clobbered too.
And what was the other one?
Yeah, either way, regardless of the glitches, I will say there was obviously enough crunch on this game that they did not have time to properly QA it.
Yeah, they obviously did not properly QA it. Otherwise, they would have found those issues before this launch.
People are like, oh, why don't they have voice acting? I'm like, because they pretty much were given a deadline 2-3 years ago and told to pump out a game by then, and very clearly did not even have time to have testers look at anything past
I would go further to note
the
that
most game-breaking bugs.
I would go further to note that the most likely the person who has been enforcing this has been Game Freak itself, not Nintendo. Nintendo, as far as I'm aware, still very much follows the rule of make it good first, worry about it.
It would be the Pokemon company as a whole, because the problem with Pokemon is they won't delay the anime, the trading cards, the manga, the plushies, and all the other merch for 6 months for them to fix the game. That's the thing Pokemon has that most game franchises don't.
Like, I know Sword Shield, a lot of people complain that there were, like, so many Pokemon not in it, but people brought up that it's like, well, it was either skim down the amount of Pokemon the game has, or it'll probably be what the problem that people are having with Scarlet Violet. Seemingly, it was like, we're capping it to these, and then the game came out and it was fine.
And if you notice, the best looking Pokemon games, Let's Go and Legends Arceus, both had limited Pokedexes.
So this one having like 400 or so was like, maybe it should have had less.
Yeah, this is very much them suddenly hitting the wall and realizing maybe the whole adding to the roster every game another 100 Pokemon is not the best idea.
Whereas people are still mad. They're like, why can't I play with all 1,000?
Because why can't they? Well, because they haven't made them all into this format yet.
Right.
Yeah.
They would literally have to pre-plan that everything needs to look a certain way with certain upgrades that all of them can get across the board and preset well in advance in order for that plan to work. And they've only just recently, like the last 5 years or so, gone into 3D. Like full on big system 3D.
Oh, big! I was gonna say because they in 2013 they unveiled the 3D models that they used up through and including Sword and Shield. But those were originally for the 3DS.
I was gonna say, like, even then, they had to switch from handheld to the Switch now. So
yeah, so they had to really up the fidelity. Even if they used the same models, they needed to up the fidelity a lot, and that's still going to take time.
Yeah. I think even in some cases it was... I think they might have said that they had to do entirely new models in some cases for Sword Shield because some just would not translate well to the Switch.
Although that said,
they're using,
separate from the glitches, it does have the problem where, you know, if you're standing in like the area with all the windmills and there's like 2 windmills in the background, the windmills are moving at about 1 frame per second.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of that going on in that game, I noticed too. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff, especially also when you're riding Pokemon too. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on.
It's definitely I don't know which is a better way to put it, or maybe both are accurate, that the Switch struggles to play this game, or that the game is not optimized for the Switch. Probably both are true.
Because again, this is very obviously been rushed.
Right.
Yeah, I think I've seen some people say that it's a matter of like, if you notice in general, things that are at a distance will be a lot choppier animation until you finally get close. So I think it's a matter of a way for them to make it so the game isn't constantly crashing, I guess. So it's like, okay, that's less important at the moment, so we're not going to have it look smooth until you actually get up to it.
But yeah, as Matt said, we're not actually a gaming news podcast, so it's probably a good time to move on to Check's notes, more games.
Yep, to my stuff. So let me start the button here again, and let me go back to my list. So scrolling down, I have a list of essentially most of these are Metroidvanias. I will argue that the last one on this list is actually a combination of things. But first of all, I want to go into Wasteland because that was the one I started with first. It's a game that I've had on my Steam for quite some time. Recently found out that I can tell it to look at controllers like Xbox 360 controller or a Steam controller and listen to it as it's a keyboard, and that'll actually fix a lot of its controller issues. However, despite this, I managed to get to the last boss, and the last boss is a cheating piece of BS. And after dealing with so many of them like that in this game, I just can't be bothered to finish Wasteland, even though I'm literally there. It's literally one guy keeping me from finishing the game, and it's just like, oh, the hell with this after like the third or fourth try. Because like the big thing is I need to be able to hit this guy with a ranged attack from one weapon, and then quickly move in and start swiping at him. The thing is, like, every other thing this guy does is something that blocks my range attack, which I need to stun him with. It's like everything about this last guy is just literally cheap BS to either constantly knock me into a constant damage trap or to constantly block everything I need to be doing to him in order to be able to get at him. So it's just like, nah, I'm done with this game. The controls are really stilted and weird, and the last boss in particular is a cheating piece of BS. So done with Wasteland. The next one I tried was Escape from Tethys. Whereas again, the Wasteland problem was that it's a cheating BS bosses and stuff. Escape from Tethys' problem is that it is very, very floaty. Its controls, the ability to aim, which you definitely need to do because there are going to be enemies above or below you, is very clunky and does not like to respond well. So literally the entire game, but due to its controls, is very bad, and I maybe played it a half hour and went, not the heck with this too. A shame really, because it looked like it was a very promising, like 8-bit looking Metroidvania sci-fi game. But that gets tossed out the window. Now, Inexistence. I managed to actually get all the way through Inexistence. It's a very loose plot. Something about your main character and his older sister being guardians. The older sister has been somehow put to permanent sleep by some bad guy who's trying to destroy the continent, and your character goes off to defeat him. There's supposed to be like a dodge mechanic to the game, but the dodging really doesn't work very well. However, the jumping does a better job of the dodging. So as long as it's not a low ceiling, you can usually dodge everything just by jumping instead. And you can get through the game. Although there is a bug with chests, which I did bump into, which at least it still marks the chest as open, so it still counts to your open chest thing if you're trying to look for achievements. But on the other hand, a bunch of other achievements have like no explanation. I have no idea how I'm supposed to get them. So I couldn't even finish that if I want to. And then furthermore, I get to the end of the game and literally, I don't know what's going on, but apparently the entire game was like a daydream of the kids, of the little boys. Not sure how he's related to the girl, but as soon as she wakes up, she's just like, you need to get out of here. He's going to find you. The man that was the main bad guy suddenly walks in a different outfit without glowing eyes, yells, berates the boy, and literally tosses him out of the room. And that's the end of the game. I'm like, what the heck did I just witness? Because it looks like it's borderline child abuse, if I'm not mistaken here.
I was going to say, child abuse is what you witnessed.
Apparently, Inexistence has a remastering, but it still suffers the same clunky combat system. And it has a New Game Plus where you play the girl, and supposedly it'll explain the ending better, but at this point I'm like, all you did was add some visual tweaks, and you gave us the other half of the game, which is basically a cut and copy of the first half of the game, just that you changed the character. I'm not really interested. I think I'm done with this one too. So those were the 3 disappointing ones. Now, Abyss Odyssey. This was an interesting one. So I thought it was originally some other continent, but apparently this is by a Chilean game developer called Ace Team, and they actually drew from local lore for like the art style and stuff, and the monster designs. And the long and the short of it is that a evil warlock has put himself into a permanent sleep after a series of events that went south in his life when he was a normal man, and so like becoming a warlock. All this going wrong. He tried to wipe the memories of a loved one that he had become attached to after defending a village, after basically defeating the previous warlock, although he accidentally did it because he was just intending to grab the warlock's book and run. Because he was obsessed with learning more about the dark arts. Turns out he turned himself into a good guy, fell in love with a girl, they became a good couple, and then she started realizing what was actually going on, and in his attempt to erase her memories, he possibly put her to sleep forever. Which is also, and in his grief, that's what he did to himself, and then his dreams became basically supernatural reality, including, in fact, the beloved female character, who is your first immediate playable character. She's basically one of his dreams come to life, and she is trying to kill him to end the nightmares. I unlocked another character in the midst of my playthrough. I believe they call him the Monk. Essentially, it's a robed figure that if you see beyond the robe, you see there's like a lot of weird red skeletal designs going on in there. But it's always a monk robe with hands that hold a two-handed greatsword, and you got armored boots, and you're just marching around slaying stuff. And apparently, the air quotes monk is the combined souls of the people of Chile who have fallen victim to the warlock's monsters, but have then reculminated into this being that seeks to destroy the warlock. And that's who I won the game with. After like about essentially, and the gameplay is a lot like a Metroidvania game, but the thing is that you're expected to die in this game, so it becomes a Metroidvania crossed with a roguelike. And so what you're doing is you're collecting gold so you can get better unlocks and better things to help you towards the end of your run, and also looking for gear which may or may not spawn depending upon your luck in your particular run. And basically just keep going through it until you also level up enough that you can finally reach the end. It took me, I think, 3 tries at the boss to get him. The first 2 times I kind of messed up like right before the boss, so I lost almost all my gear right before I reached him. So it's like, oh, here I am bare bones again. Great. The last time I got stopped like I think a couple floors early, because then the rest of the floors were really easy afterwards. So I did manage to find a few more upgrades and get a few more health potions before I got down there. And it was just enough to allow me to get a human soldier, because you have a chance of recovering with a human soldier after your character dies, but you can still use them as a regular playable character. My human soldier, when I went down there that last time, is the guy who finished it off for me and got rid of the warlock. So that's how my playthrough kind of went with it. Really nice art style. Prepared to die plenty. And also there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I believe I unlocked a 3rd character, and I'm not sure if there's any other characters past that. But not only have I not played the 3rd character, but there's also another zone, and I think there's probably multiple other zones after that that you can also unlock. So there's still a lot I can do with that game if I want to. But the way I looked at it is that, you know what? I can go into this game with a new character and a new zone to play in, and do that as a stream. And that could be an easy, like, maybe upwards of 6 hours stream, so maybe get 6 videos out of it. And I'll be happy with that, and it'll be just another run. So it's a game that you can very easily come back to, and it has a lot of good replay value because of the roguelike elements to it. So it'll be a game I'll come back to eventually one of these days. Enjoyed my stay.
Hmm.
All right. So that brings us on to our reviews of Shame,
Which
which
also back
is
to
more talking for Matt.
me. Drink. This is why I went AFK during Pokemon really quick, because I'm like, I need water. Oh, I'm having water. I better go to the bathroom real quick, too. All right. So, hitting start again. So, what was on the checklist first?
A Day in the Death.
A Day in the Death. So, overall favorite thing about this, a big development arc for Owen, who has been sorely needing it. Bad thing about this, too bad Owen is still a piece of garbage. It goes through a lot of stuff that could really greatly improve the character, but at the same time, he still has moments where, like, he starts, like, just undermining everything by shouting at Tasha at his apartment and then runs off like a jackass. I understand he's going through a hard time, but he doesn't need to literally take it out on everybody else. And that's, like, the underlying problem of his character, is that even when he's trying to be a good guy, he still takes it out on everyone else around him. And it's just a really nasty piece of work for writing. The writing just gets undermined by itself half the time with this character. I don't know why they kept doing that with him. I know the actor, I've seen the actor in other things, and I know he could do a lot more. It's just, I don't know. I think they just kept writing him in a circle. Favorite moment? One of the good moments about this was him explaining how he ended up here, and finally at the end of the episode when he was describing to the lady why he's even up here trying to stop her, because literally by happenstance of everything else going on in his day, he just happened to see a piece of paper fall to the pavement right in front of him, unfolded it, found out it's a picture, then looked up. Again, if this was the rule and not the broken example half the time, this would have actually been a good change for Owen. Worst scene, again, the whole shouting at Tosh, that was just unneeded, and he should have known better at that point. I understand he's going through a lot, but that was, that's back to old Owen again.
I think I said the same with the one caveat that because it's Owen, it doesn't feel as bad as if it were any other character yelling at Tasha in the same way. Because you're already like, oh yeah, it's Owen. I already hate that guy.
That still doesn't fix it, because they're trying to fix him, and they just wrote something to undermine everything they're doing to fix him.
Right.
Just nope. Thanks a lot. You just ruined it. But at least Captain Jack Harkness gets a nice joke out of it about taking pictures of him running into the dock water. So that's my final rating, I guess. Again, it would have been a really good episode if it just became the rule that we're fixing Owen and finally write him out of that spiral, but he just keeps going back into the spiral. So there's so much good with it, but there's also just the underlining issues that just keep coming back. So this could have easily been a 5, and we could have had a redemption arc for this character, but instead I'm going to leave it at least a 4, because they just keep undermining it.
So 4.0?
4.0.
Okay, so you agree with me as being the high grader of that story. And that increases the average from a 3.5 to a 3.63.
Ooh. Alrighty. So
And
then
something borrowed.
Something borrowed. I'm trying to remember which one this was again. I've watched 3 of them in one day.
The wedding.
Oh, the wedding. Loved a lot of the character interactions going on, especially between Gwen and her husband and the Torchwood team. Just lots of interesting back and forths. In particular, a lot of people get really pissed off at Jack, which Jack, to his credit, at least takes it with a grain of salt and just takes the licks and goes, "Yep," in a day's work. Bad thing about it, Really? Another alien impregnating humans for no reason? Really? I'm pretty sure we've done a lot of really weird alien on human action in this show, and this does not get much better.
This show, every other show, movies from the 70s.
70s, I thought more of them happened in the 80s, but anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, at the very least, Ridley Scott's, the good example of it happened in the 70s.
Yeah, the less the good one that was less overt about it.
Right.
Until you start making jokes about it, and then you start going, "Oh wait."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess that's favorite and least favorite. Best moment. Honestly, the scene where they realize that everyone's getting memory wiped. Had some pretty amusing dialogue, and then it's like, oh, you're wiping them all. Really? I suppose it's better than what could have happened here. At least no major actors died. Apparently, a few side people did, and just up and vanished. Technically, then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not going to explain. They didn't. They would have to explain to Reese's family what happened to Banana Boat.
But yeah, it was still a nice, amusing scene, and also I like Gwen and them standing their ground, going, "No, we're still not gonna wipe our memories. This is a relationship based on trust and honesty, and we're not doing this anymore." Which is also why, even though she does have moments with Jack, she's also very much a standing her ground that this is not going to be a continuing relationship. At least not in that manner. Which again is an actual sign of real maturity in the show. Because if they kept going the way they originally were, I would expect that to be a side thing that just keeps happening all the dang time and just roll my eyes. So favorite scene, yeah, that was my favorite scene. The least favorite scene, yeah, really awkwardly trying to explain to Gwen as she's suddenly going through like all the stages at once what's going on to her, and that she got impregnated by alien by being literally just bitten. Really kind of weird. Don't get me wrong, I would think there'd be some things going on, but I don't think those particular things would all necessarily be going on all at once. Maybe just me, I don't know. It just felt really weird. But final thoughts on it. Despite again the odd alien on human stuff going on yet again, it's otherwise a very interesting and at times very amusing story. And like I said, in particular, the interactions between some of the groups is pretty fun for the most part, but there is some weird factor here and there, depending on what's going down at certain points. So overall, again, I think this has to land like somewhere around a 4.
Okay, that puts you by far the highest rating. The
Really?
highest rating before that was a 3.
I was going to go 3.5, but okay.
And that increases the average from a 2.5 to a 2.88.
Yeah, I'm still nowhere near the average. You guys really hated that one. Okay. I thought there's a lot of amusing bits, but
we spent at least 10 minutes talking about how much we hated the trope that this episode was based on.
the human on alien action, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the amusing bits, that part in particular would be like the all like, oh Lord, why moment of everything. But for some reason, my brain can mostly remember only like the last half of the episode in particular, and it seems to hyper focus there, where it's a bunch of running action and jokes about transforming people and accidentally getting the wrong person, etc.
I mean, I guess it's a thing of like at least they take it seriously and it's not a complete joke.
Yeah, at least they
Like I
at
feel
least
like some other shows would do.
this is
potentially.
this episode basically treats it like Friday Part 6, where they have room for jokes and a little bit of humor, but at least they take the threat seriously.
Mm.
And that's at least the pins of what you need to keep going, is that if you're going to at least if you're going to do the rest of it, at least make sure that the threat is actually a legitimate threat, and it was very much a life-threatening threat until the very end there. Until they, I would call it Chekhov's gun, but it's more of Jack Harkness's gun. Is that what you could term that? Because just Jack Harkness going, oh yeah, we have more gear in the truck. Let's just put this giant space shotgun together and just blow it to smithereens. Okay, we're done. Bye.
All right. So that passed us. Do you need a glass of water?
I still have at least half a cup here. I'm good.
All
I
right.
mean, to give him a slight break, I think I know the fuck up that article about the world record made. Because apparently Doctor Who also has like longest running consecutive and most prolific science fiction TV series by, I'm assuming, but when they say by episode in brackets, they mean like episode count, and that does count all of classic and all of current with no
interesting.
specials.
So yeah, they have
no
two
specials
different
count, and the movie doesn't count, but like, they are apparently essentially, if you count total episodes of the show as a whole with no specials, it is the longest running.
Even though now some of the regular
sci-fi.
episodes are longer than some of the specials, so.
But yeah, seemingly it apparently only counts like episodes of a series and no without specials. But yeah,
Gotcha.
apparently with that is where the 819 total comes from.
So they put down the wrong thing, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they gave it the wrong label in the.
But yeah, they used the wrong label, which is
Doctor
really
Who
easy
News.
to do because apparently Guinness Book of World Records has a bad habit of doing that.
Oh.
I saw a, again, we're trying not to become a video game podcast, but it keeps coming up. I saw a thing on Tommy Tamarico, and like half his Guinness World Records are actually retitled versions of his previous ones, but all of them need to be rechecked on their accuracy, because apparently he's claiming a couple extra 100 games that he like maybe had a passing hand wave in dealing with them and then just wandered off to do whatever his next project was. So yeah, it's Guinness needs to get his stuff together and actually properly organize things, and also need to double check some accounts that they do. I would assume with Doctor Who it's very easy to do that count, but you would think that same of this guy too, but apparently not. 300 games, I don't think so, dude.
Well, see, that brief distraction had me forget that the reason I picked up my phone was to use the stopwatch. I'm sitting here scrolling on social media. I was like, why am I holding my phone?
I don't know when I finished, so oh well. Yeah, my stopwatch is still going too. Whoops.
Oh. Okay, ready for me to give you a countdown?
Oh, that's right. I need to do the explanation for this, don't I?
Yep.
So let me get back here, reset. All right.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, start.
So the episode more or less actually begins when a person finds footage of an old sideshow or whatever, and starts playing this stuff, and somehow two of the characters that are in the footage start to Actually, I think it's not even that, but something happens to the person that originally finds the footage, and then Jack Harkness starts hearing weird, like, organ music, I believe it was he described it as. It turns out a bunch of the Torchwood team are going to a theater show with some recently rediscovered footage, and in particular have features a sideshow in which one of the people that's in the sideshow very obviously seems to be Jack Harkness. As they start to question this, however, their attention is pulled away long enough that two of the characters literally escape the footage and start to run amok. One of them is a lady who, for some reason, I can't remember what her deal was, other than she's really strange, and she also has a constant need for water. But also the lead showman, who has this silver, I want to call it vial, but it's like usually called something else, I believe. But essentially, he has this silver pocket object which he then can use to, and I quote, steal the last breath of anyone that he encounters.
Oh, I think flask is the word you're looking
Flask,
for.
that's what they use.
Yeah.
Flask, yeah. So he starts claiming victims. In particular, one of the victims that gets the Torchwood's ire is that they've collected a couple of kids, which is, as anyone would describe, is not exactly an ideal predicament. So they go about trying to find a way to try and stop these characters. The person who's running the show gets his hands on some more footage, and as he's coming back to his, I assume it's a flat or whatever he has his living space in, he heads back there and encounters the water woman and has a freak out and runs back, and he has apparently already had contact with Torchwood and gets them to come over to his place again, because he does not want to risk coming in close vicinity with these people and possibly getting his breath stolen, getting zombified, or whatever happens to these poor victims. And he manages to get them to come over. They find that some of the footage has definitely been gone through, and apparently the plan of the sideshow master is that he's planning to air more of the footage and get more of their crew to show up and basically try and take over the world. And make everyone a constant watching person in the audience. To this end, they go back to the theater. They manage to capture the boys' parents and make them forced viewers of the show. They manage to bring back several more members of their crew, but Captain Jack also comes up with the plan to basically use another recorder full of film to film them, and once they are recorded, to pop the thing open and basically bleach the film in sunlight and hopefully destroying them and sending them back to where they came. They give chase to the headmaster of the show. He tosses the vial full of last breaths. Several people just vanish, and others basically go into a cardiac arrest and just instantly die. They manage to get it, but they only save the one child, and they immediately go after them to try and find them again. But as they are putting this all to rest and at least have one success story out of all this, they also come to the realization that there's maybe a chance that maybe out there, with people constantly looking through old reels and old footage, there might be a chance that the showmaster might come back again. And as they're putting away the vial, they hear organ music again, just briefly as someone drops open a thing of found footage. The end.
You got 4 minutes, 24 seconds.
Roughly what I have as well.
Mm-hmm. Also, I'm usually not great at catching this because I usually have Twitch closed to avoid bandwidth issues. But thanks for the follow, Pedigree81555. Always nice to get a new follow live during podcast, which is probably not very common for us.
Not overly
All
common,
right.
no. Thank you.
So starting with the review with what we liked. We start with Ran, who said, interesting look at the traveling show, as it is called in England. apparently the equivalent of a circus sideshow here in America.
Hmm.
We don't hear about the European version much. It was a nice reference. Okay. Matt, what did you like?
Honestly, I think I the main villain, the sideshow master, seems to be like a very generic take over the world kind of guy, but at the same time, he has that really interesting underlying menace that could make him a good returning character if they could flesh him out some more.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's my
Um,
general feel of a positive thing about it. They could have easily had a reoccurring villain with this guy,
okay, fair. I don't know if that's
especially since they seem to
technically.
hit Dent at the very end, at least.
Mhm. I don't know if that
Hmm.
technically counts as taking mine or not. I'll think about it.
Okay.
Um, Alex, what did you like about the episode?
Um, let's see. Uh, God, it's one of those things where, like, in some cases, I've seen stuck in my head so much that I'm like, shit. Um, can I think of an overall thing? I guess, and I feel like at some point this might have been a negative and flipped to a positive, but uh, the idea of the villains using a method that, and maybe it was more like the explanation, like they kind of just flat out state it, sort of, but like at one point that I took issue with, but like the fact that it is literally like um film effectively killed the need for this kind of entertainment and they're using it to get back very uh it like that almost makes you think of like you could almost make a video killed the radio star kind of a
I
reference, but it does
That's
not, it's not
what I
Oh.
was just thinking. I was
exactly.
like, imagine if Tosh was playing Video Killed the Radio Star back at the hub.
Hmm.
Okay, is
Yes,
that the end of yours? Or is still going?
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I won't focus even so much on the characters themselves since Matt mentioned that, but just the combination of premises I think was it really could have been an effective like ghost movie or even a slasher movie. The combination of the way the villains approached people when nobody was around, the whole like dehydrating shtick. I don't think
Hmm.
their origin as like coming from film in that way, like I don't think I've seen that sort of, maybe one or two of the parts, but I don't think I've
Hmm.
seen a story that was really like this. And I think they were really effective about how they went about it within the limited, the time that it takes to show a Torchwood episode. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
more time and more
if
budget. This could be very effective.
if anything, I think it maybe could have used more time because the villains aren't really on screen very much because by the time you figure out what's going on, it's time to kill them off.
Hmm.
But especially if this was just a little bit like half as long again, would have really had the atmosphere would have really served it very well.
Hmm.
Which moves us on to what we disliked about the episode. Rand said, honestly, the Ghostmaker was way too obvious a villain. In fact, the whole plot was simplistic enough that it would have been better suited to an episode of Doctor Who or Sarah Jane Adventures.
And you know, it's
Mike,
funny because
go ahead.
the more I think about it, the tone of the episode isn't even all that Torchwood. So I can kind of see where he's coming from because this does feel like more of a Doctor Who tone. Maybe not like an outright Sarah Jane tone,
Yeah, I think it
But
might still be a
definitely
little
at
bit
least
much
a
for Sarah
Doctor Who
Jane,
tone.
but then again, Sarah Jane's also not
Mm.
known for pulling punches either once in a while.
There-
So
Yeah.
The biggest difference is Sarah Jane probably would not have. They probably would not have had people die, or if they did, it wouldn't have been so visual, like
Mhm.
with all the like
Mm.
dehydration
Well,
and everything.
I feel like the difference is Doctor Who would have killed off some, but not all, and
Uh-huh.
absolutely no one would have died if it was Sarah Jane.
And then Torchwood was like, "We'll have the little kids survive," and that's it.
Mm.
that one guy's parents, the hell with them.
But yeah, I mean,
As far as we're aware, they died too. I don't know.
right?
Mm.
Yeah,
Unless they were
Fair
just sat
point.
there hypnotized, but I doubt it.
yeah. We didn't even have like the circus people didn't like sexually harass anybody. Um, the Owen didn't even have a chance to be a dick this episode. I don't think.
Amazing,
No.
right?
That's 2 episodes in a row.
As a matter of fact, instead there was a joke made at Owen's expense of being basically undead by the guy grabbing him and going, "You don't have a breath in you," and just kind of leaving him there stunned.
Ah, yes. Which that reminds me of something I laughed at during the episode, and I'm trying to think if it's going to come up later or not. If it doesn't come up, I'll mention it during my final thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Matt, what did you dislike about the episode?
Well, I kind of did mention a scene there with the main baddie. Was they call him the Ghostmaker?
That's what Rand called him. I didn't look. I don't remember them saying that during the episode, but it might be unedited.
It is only mentioned once by the old woman.
Oh, okay.
And I did not catch it the first time.
Gotcha.
I caught it the second time though. Yeah.
I
Whereas-
didn't
like,
catch
she's-
that
she's-
during her thing either.
She's not even. I don't think she's even shown when she says it, which is the funny bit. But yeah, like it comes up like once, and they never call him by that again. So.
But if that's his credit, that's his credit, I suppose.
Mm.
Whereas if he's the owner of the show, oh yes, because they even say this in TARDIS that this is him. His real name was Joshua Joy.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
It said that on the banner behind him that it was
Yeah.
that it was his show, Joshua Joy's traveling show.
I'm kind of hopping on Rand's coattails a little bit here too. As much as I like the idea of the character, especially like I said, with some of the reactions we get out of him to certain events that go on in the story, it really is this needed more time because we really get like paper thin ideas as who this guy is and why he's doing what he's doing. It's not. I don't recall it being explained very well. If it was very rushed. Again,
Yeah.
I think it's mostly due to the fact that they're trying to play time, and this kind of feels like a story that might have needed to be a two-parter, like the middle of the season or something.
It might have been a script. Some who wrote that? Because I don't. It was written by Peter J. Hammond. Let me look because I don't recognize that name. I don't know if they're a regular that I forgot or. So this is the only story that he wrote that was actually aired. He also wrote a Doctor Who story that was never picked up, which was going to be in season 23. So he's pretty much outside the franchise. I would guess that this was a script written as an independent story.
Most
That that he then adapted it for Torchwood when he got the commission.
And adapt him basically meant he had to pare down a lot of the really good details because it does feel like there's some
even
really
like-
good details missing here.
I mean, if this were a ghost movie, like that's probably enough details, and then you just add in, you turn the hero into Jack.
You turn one of the heroes
for
into
a
Jack and a couple of add a couple other things depending on who's there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I'm going to kind of add probably what I dislike the most about this is that it worked, like I've said several times now, it works fine as a ghost story, but it has nothing to do with aliens, the rift, or even any sort of scientific explanation. Like,
Yeah, this is not your normal Torchwood story.
like the fantasy side of Torchwood kind of works. Actually, yeah. So I'll say The scene that I
kind of does
laughed out.
start sad a little bit, and then does happen
Right.
once in a while.
The scene that I laughed at before was you had an undead man telling an immortal man that it was medically impossible for people's like spirits to have been taken out of their bodies. And I was just laughing at the idea of two medical impossibilities having this conversation. But yeah, I mean, naturally, obviously, this premise is impossible. Normally, Torchwood would make an effort to explain it having to do with the rift.
There is,
I mean, there is the idea of like, yes, like the soul is tangible in Doctor Who. You see it once in a while, but usually they make an effort to be like, oh, they accidentally used an alien camera that did something weird, and they don't really do anything like that here. They're just like, oh yeah, it kind of happened. It was magical. These guys were already like fucked up. We don't know what they were, and that's really it.
They do say that there was rift activity at the Electro, which is a location where this all goes to shit.
Yeah, the Electro
But-
Theater.
Yeah, but
But they say
that
there's
was
like
But
there was a
that's
spike
very
in the
vague.
that was a
naming.
plot device.
yeah.
Yeah,
They
that
don't.
was really a
they don't
plot
go
device to
into
be like,
it,
oh yeah,
really.
go here.
Yeah,
Like,
that's basically
that
a plot
was
device to
like,
get them to go show up.
That was like, do they have some sort? I'm sure they have like a ghost detector in Ghostbusters that I'm not remembering. Matt, I'm far from a Ghostbusters expert. Matt would know.
PKE meter.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I have heard of that. Yeah. So the rift activity thing was just a PKE meter for this episode.
Yep.
That's all it was.
The counting of spiritual activity is now this. If it's this Twinkie normally, it'd be now the size of a football field.
Right.
Tell about the Twinkie.
But yeah, it is weird that it's like they don't try to be like, oh, like maybe they're supposed to be otherworldly and they all came through the rift or something. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's supposed to be the implication for how they keep showing up randomly.
Like, we've had rift aliens and things like that.
Yeah.
Or time war refugees and shit like that. They definitely could have come up with an explanation like that. But instead they didn't. They were just like, oh yeah, we should just film them again and then overexpose it.
And that erases them for now.
Which
so
again,
the next bit of footage somehow brings them back to
right.
life. Ooh.
And what you get, beating a dead horse. Plenty of horror movies would be like, yeah, that's perfectly sensible. I could even see that Nightmare on Elm Street number 25. You have to take a picture. You have to film Freddy Krueger on a camera and expose it to the light. I
or
would
set
buy
on fire
that.
or something, and that would burn his image. Yeah.
But Torchwood, I expect more explanation.
Yeah. And I guess as far as my least favorite overall aspect is, and this would almost be a scene, but I like the scene enough, so I'm just gonna go with like this story beat of all the people to survive. It kind of seems the most fucked up to let this one kid from this family of 4 be the only one to survive without like going into like the implications of that. Like, wow, this kid's alive, that's cool, except his sister's dead, his parents are dead, he's got probably nowhere to go for all we know. Like, we don't know if he's got family or not.
The implications of it, yeah.
All the other victims are dead. As far as we know, that one guy who runs the theater, his parents are not dead too, because we don't know what they did to them.
Yeah, actually, yeah, they never even bring that up. Like, those parents would be dead.
It was basically, yeah. Oh yeah, if his parents came in with him, yeah. But yeah, it's fun. Like, I could just imagine the conversation in the writer's room. They'd be like, well, should we kill everybody? They'd be like, no, that's too dark. Besides, I think there was a kid there. Wouldn't it be heartwarming if the kid survived? Yeah, the kid survives. It's a real happy ending.
Yeah,
And
like
then the
honest to God, and you know what? I
Everyone
got it
else's
wrong.
murder.
I got it wrong. I got it wrong last week. Adrift is the next episode after this, and that is crushingly depressing.
Oh yeah.
This honestly should have had the bulk of them survive because even though it's not very Torchwood, we're about
It
to
would
get
offplay the
like
next really
one of the
depressing episode.
it would be a nice offset
Yep.
to have a really happy ending when
Like-
we're about to have like Torchwood
Two-
is really fucked up actually.
Two
So
episodes
that's
from
up
now,
actually, and here we're gonna crush your soul in a compactor.
like 2
Yeah.
episodes from now, half the Torchwood team is dead.
Yeah,
So-
that
Yeah.
too.
So it would have been nice to have like justice once everybody lives moment in
Although
Torchwood.
it's funny too because that also fits the movie mentality. Because what happens in movies half the time, somebody seemingly has a happy ending, and then the sequel comes out and it's them as an adult and they've had a shitty life because of how the last movie ended.
Mm.
Of course, that's kind of an annoying trope that doesn't usually make the movie any better, but it still is a
Yeah.
parallel.
Mm.
All right, moving on to favorite scenes. Ran said, I think Yanto's childlike fascination with the old-timey cinema was awesome. It was well acted by Gareth David-Lloyd.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think he even said like it was, a memory from his childhood. So that definitely fits in as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt.
Once again, I feel that if he was given enough time to be properly developed, the, I guess, air quotes, ghost maker, since that's what Rand's running with, and it's easy enough to
Yeah.
remember. I feel if that character could be given enough time and basically amplify him up to a slasher villain like he already is aiming for, he could have made for an interesting returning villain, especially since they're already hinting at the fact that that very easily could happen again somehow. Maybe then they would also actually have to take the time to explain how this keeps happening.
Mm.
That's great, but you didn't mention a scene anywhere in there.
Oh, shoot. Wow. Brain. Actually, you know what? Since I keep hinting at it, the last scene of the episode. Jack putting away the silver flask, and all of a sudden, somewhere else in Cardiff or the UK or somewhere like that, a tin of footage is dropped, and organ music plays sinisterly. The threat is not quite over yet. The end.
God, with all we're talking about how this episode is very untortured, suddenly thinking about that's a very Goosebumps ending. A good Goosebumps ending, but a Goosebumps ending.
Well, honestly, there's also hints at 80s horror movies too, because 80s,
Yeah.
80s horror and action movies
yeah,
would do that a
yeah.
lot.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Literally the end of Big Trouble from Little China. Jack Burton's back in his truck heading off into a nasty rainstorm, and all of a sudden out of nowhere the Yeti thing from earlier in the movie just pops out in the back of his truck. And that's where they end.
Back when the eye catch was before the credits.
Big Trouble.
So that was Matt. So next is Alex.
Ooh, you know what? I am gonna go with Jack talking about like having like a little side conversation with Yanto about having been in a traveling show. Because it was just like a nice little side bit of getting to know a little bit more about something that he got up to. When they like with some of these, I'd almost think that they just drop that. They just have like, wow, he's in this footage. That's weird. And he'd be like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. But instead, we actually do get a little scene of him actually opening up about that.
And I think that's like we shit on the running tropes in Torchwood a lot. I think that was a benefit of season 2 that they managed to get Jack to open up a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously at the end of season 1, everybody knew Jack's biggest secret.
Yeah.
And then he started actually opening up a little bit. Whereas in season 1, they would have been like, "Oh yeah, funny coincidence that someone who looks like me was on there," and that would have been the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been the end of it, except for Gwen sitting there going, "Come on,
Yeah.
Jack,
But
you can't lie to
but
me."
Gwen was. I mean, I'm not going to say she was barely in this episode, but she was, relatively speaking, barely in this episode. Like she was not a person with a lot of lines.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but again, this is season 2,
Which
so
again
she didn't
is
need to be there
kind
to
of
be.
on Torchwood.
It is on Torchwood, but then again, she just had her big episode, previous episode. So.
Yeah, true.
Mm. And she's about to have another one if given that Adrift is right after this.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
So it's on to me. So I would say my favorite scene is the first attack, when the Ghostmaker and his girlfriend go after, what was she? She was at like an ATM or something, right?
I think she was at a bus stop.
Bus stop. Okay, I thought she dealt with. Oh, maybe she was buying. Like I was like, I felt like she dealt with some
because it
sort
was
of machine,
like,
but it was.
I mean, there might have been one there, but it was a little like a roofed bus stop sort of a thing that sort of like almost like a little shed looking thing.
It was suitifying. It was suitably creepy. She it was it was reasonably acted in terms of like she acted the way you would expect. Like this creepy person is fucking touching her hair and putting her fingers in her mouth, and she's like, "Yeah, you can fuck right off." Like she didn't actually say that, but she got the point across clearly enough. She just didn't know that they were gonna fucking take her breath out of her body and shit like that. But I thought that scene was really well done and really portrayed like what we were dealing with here. All right. Least favorite scenes, and I think this is the very next scene, or at least the next scene with those characters. Ren says when the Ghostmaker just forces himself into his shop and takes the lady's breath. I had been of the opinion they worked via temptation before this. This broke the pattern. I didn't think the first one worked through any sort of temptation.
I mean, they sort of try to, but it obviously doesn't work.
They tried, and they tried to.
Yeah. Whereas this one, there's no pretense at all.
Right.
I agree with this as a choice, but for different reasons, and mainly just a matter of, lady, there's two creepy people outside your shop. Maybe don't open the door to tell them it's closed. It seemed like such an odd thing. Like if they'd had
the
to
door
bash
locked and
the
tell them
door,
to piss off, or you're calling the police.
Yeah, like have them have to like barge in, like force their way in, or like, I mean, they're technically supposed to be ghosts, so they could just get in without having to, potentially.
Maybe.
Depending on what logic we're working on.
Right.
They seemed physical enough for ghosts.
So like, yeah, having him just kick the door in, like, and her just like standing at the door but not opening it, because again, that's like, why would you do that? Like,
right. What I thought was weird about that scene was what the fuck is her name? The character Pearl. Her behavior was different enough from scene to scene that I couldn't tell initially if it was the same character or not. And I was like, "Oh, is this the girl that they just like attacked? And is she now a member of their circus? And she's acting like a creepy ghost too now?" I was like, "No, it's the same character, but just like her. She's talking, about completely differently. Like she went from before she started off, she was almost like a Drusilla character, and then in this one, she was just like, I want to drink her tears or something like that, and it's like, that's it was different enough for this character that we barely knew that I was confused.
it makes me wonder if that's like by virtue of this obviously not having been shot like in like chronologically,
Mm,
if it was a case of like certain acting choices were made and then minds changed over time
that's
Maybe.
possible. Or she was
or
less
something.
familiar with the role when one of them was shot, and then like,
Yeah.
you know,
Or
a week later
mm,
she was more familiar with the role, and
mm,
did something different.
mm. And also I guess just some scenes kind of make that shift kind of have to happen because if they're not attacking anyone, then she's just very like trying to think of the right word. But all that comes to mind is like the manic pixie dream girl trope. Like when she's like using rainwater and just splashing it on herself or drinking it and stuff is very like completely different body language in that to when they're trying to be creepy.
Mhm. Which again, I feel like she was at least partially inspired by Drusilla, or if there's a trope that Drusilla was, there probably is a trope that Drusilla came from, but in Buffy. So that was all still Rand's, right? So now
Yeah.
for Matt's.
I believe so. So this is least favorite.
Yes, least favorite scene.
Oh, least favorite scene. Again, that they don't show enough detail or explain enough what's going on. I was very confused the first time when I saw people dying. Just like all of a sudden, a couple of people just disappeared. I'm like, what? And again, there's like we don't revisit all those people to see what actually happened to them. Assumably, they all died, along with everyone except for the one kid in that hospital. And again, we also aren't sure what happened to the parents of the guy running the theaters, so we're not even sure if they're alive anymore either, because they
I know
probably had their
the
souls
wiki
sucked out.
says the wiki says
Mm.
that they were killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
They never
Oh.
state that
Mhm.
even remotely precisely what happened to them, so you'll see. Yeah, assumably they died too.
Mm.
So
Like they
I guess the idea is that their breath was also in the flasks. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Like they
when
find them
everyone except
just
for the one escaped.
yeah, they find them sitting in the chairs. They just never show us what happened to them. I think we only ever
Oh,
see actually like two of them die. So maybe the budget for this episode was just very tight that they
that
couldn't
Maybe.
maybe
get other
too.
people. Yeah, because like you don't see the. I mean, I can see why they wouldn't show the little girl dying, but yeah, you see
Uh,
like the first two
well, you
victims
see,
die, and that's it.
yeah, you see like a couple people inside that one room where they're getting held captive suddenly disappear. Assumably they
Mm,
die. And then you see the kids in the hospital suddenly sit up, and one of them apparently dies as the other one goes back to sleep.
And then they told Jack that the only one survived.
Mm-hmm.
mm.
And that's the one they managed to survive because that's the only one they managed to keep. But yeah, it's they were very vague on that whole what was happening with that scene. It wasn't until afterwards I'm
And
like,
I
oh,
just felt it might be
okay.
because like I felt like it was rushed. Like I felt like, oh, we got rid of the
It
twin.
Yeah.
We
was
have to
rushed,
kill them now.
and
We
as
have
we
no
were
more time in
saying,
the
it might
episode.
be that they were running out of budget too, so they can't really show it as much as they
Mm.
should have,
Mhm.
and they were rushed for time for whatever reason. Yeah,
Mhm.
it just really feels like there's not enough time in this
That
episode for
that's
this
true because they
Yeah.
even
story.
like they talk about it like there was almost like an entire ward in the hospital that they just kept adding bodies to, and I don't think we ever see
Mm.
more than two at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Like,
like yeah, we see like the first victim and then the cafe lady gets brought in and then like we see the two kids in hospital beds but we never see the parents. So it was probably the exact same set.
maybe that's also why there's
Um
so few members of the troop that ever actually like come out in person for more than 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, cuz we don't get the whole lot of them until right before like a minute before they're about to
Hmm.
Get wiped.
be gotten rid of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was all Matt's least favorite scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
Oh, let's see. Because yeah, like I would almost go with like them trying to be like, yay, the kid survived, except the rest of his family dead. But we're not gonna talk about that. But it's one of those things where like Yanto kind of saves that scene for me, so I can't really call it the worst scene in my opinion. So, bloody hell. You know what? Just because it makes Gwen look completely incompetent when the ghost maker is like running out of the building or whatever, and like he just like barrels right through her, I think. Or like she tries to grab him maybe and is like immediately thrown off. I'm like, damn. Way to look, made a way, like, Jesus Christ. May, oh, god damn, wow.
What are
I'm
you trying to
forgetting
even
my
say? I
words
don't even.
consistently.
I think he's trying. I think they're
to
trying to say.
make
Yeah, there we go.
Gwen look completely useless. Because, like, she really is just kind of there in
Well,
this
to
episode.
also be fair, in that exact same scene, Yanto comes up right after her and grabs the flask and makes a run for it. That's what they were aiming to do. Is at least one of them get it.
Yeah. But it's just so funny how, like...
That's a good way to highlight this is Yanto's episode, not Gwen's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's left that we have not talked about for me to take? I guess the whole scene with the parents and the film editor just seemed weird to me. I was like, wait, you already have people showing up and you were editing the film today? Shouldn't it, shouldn't there be time spaced out in case he got stuck in traffic or, something happened, but instead you are doing it the same day?
Yeah. Like, that does seem like something you would think that you would have at least have finished the day before.
Like, talk about plot contrivance. Like, that is a very thing where
Yeah.
you only work on it the same day if you're expecting to be part of a movie or something.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like that's almost a thing where like if it was just that he was running through the footage to make sure it was still like okay, and then the weird shit happened and he's like, "Oh, what? How'd this get in here?" And then just obviously didn't have time to mess with it to like check properly. Like that'd be one thing, but yeah, it is a bit weird that it's like, wait, you're still editing this?
right.
And the 11th hour, like, seems a bit weird. Because they didn't seem to find it odd that he was still editing. They found it annoying. They were just pissed that he was late.
Right.
Uh,
All right, so that brings us to final thoughts. Rand said, I think this script could have used one more revision to straighten out the motivation of the Night Travelers and how they have the power to break out of film. Perhaps the Night Travelers and the Ghostmaker were actually members of the Unseelie. That's not an alien thing, Rand. The acting of the main cast is good, but the villains seem stilted, which is a shame since the Ghostmaker is played by Julian Bleach, who would go on to be a terrific Davros. He said, I'd have to say it was more the direction.
I
All right,
don't
Matt?
think it's that. This is final thoughts.
Yep.
I agree there's issues there, but I don't think it's so much the direction. I think, well, if I was the director and realized what kind of limited time we'd have, I would have done some reorganization of what the plot's doing to try and better explain things. But it's not guaranteed you would still have the time to actually finish it. It's There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with all these characters, and it's a really good setup. But the problem is that they don't have time to explain it all properly, so it all kind of just fumbles together and gets quickly shoved out the door at the end. And thankfully they did leave the door open, but as far as I'm aware, they have never returned to these characters, and that's a damn crying shame because they could make for interesting returning characters, especially for a show like Torchwood.
Big Finish hasn't even.
Yeah, even Big Finish hasn't touched them. And yes, I was thinking that this might have been the guy that came back as Davros, but I wasn't sure. But yes, that again then shows how good of an actor this guy is, because he's probably one of the best versions of Davros outside of like the original. And he's done a lot with Davros at this point too. He keeps coming back every once in a while whenever they want him, basically. Yeah, there's a lot of really good, interesting stuff here. It just literally needed like almost double the runtime to show it all properly. Is my problem with it. Even if you were to reshuffle it to get the explanations in there, I feel like something else would have to suffer for it, and I'm not sure I would want to lose all that. It just genuinely feels like there's just not enough runtime. But that's my thoughts.
All right, Alex.
Piggybacking off of that, I almost feel that if you'd started, like, get rid of him, the guy editing it at the start, and just jump right to him getting there and being late and talking about there was something weird going on with the footage. So, like, cut out that first, like, couple of minutes and just skip right to they're at the Electro and, like, the weird shit that goes on there. And that probably would have given us, like, a little more time to do some stuff here and there. Especially because you'd be cutting out Jack getting there to a point, even though, like, you could argue that's relevant to keep. But, you know, yeah, actually, yeah, you'd probably cut about, like, 5 minutes out of the start and be able to shove that 5 minutes somewhere else. And that could have maybe worked. But yeah, this is one that, like, I enjoyed it well enough. But yeah, there's, like, the more I think about it, the more there's, like, a lot of little things that kind of add up. Like, well, that was an odd choice. And, like, again, like, yes, let's have this one little boy survive, but literally no one else in his family survive. But try to play it off as, like, well, at least one person lived. Like, the one person who's probably going to be the most fucked up by surviving.
Oh boy, you're the only survivor.
Like,
good luck, kiddo.
yeah. Like, honestly, if they'd killed off, like, that entire family of 4 and the original victim was the one to come back, that
The
would
one
have
who
been
logically
something.
would have been at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and also, that probably would have given them an excuse to actually show her parents, who are referred to but never seen. So again, I do think this is a matter of this was maybe an episode that was made with a much tighter budget than some of the other ones. Which I guess, given some of the stuff that happens in this series, could be justifiable. And I would even say, I think I meant to say this before, but this does feel like an episode where they felt like they had a really good idea, and then 3/4 of the way into writing it, they're like, oh fuck, we gotta, like, wrap this up, don't we? Because yeah, we just go from getting, like, well, they're all coming out of the screen, see ya. It's very
They're
like
starting to parade down the center aisle when suddenly the film is exposed. They all scream and disappear. The end.
Yeah. Yeah, when suddenly the animator suffered a fatal heart attack. Like, it's it's just, There are a lot of like, yeah, like to some points, I don't even know if this would necessarily need a two-parter so much as like if they'd set up some of this prior, like in another episode of talk about this kind of thing had come up, and you didn't have to like spend basically half the episode explaining what's going on, like who these people are, which is what it kind of feels like we do. Um, if we hadn't devoted so much time to that, then the plot would have actually been able to move forward a lot easier. Um, to the point, I have to believe that whether it was they were supposed to come back in whatever the original series 3 was supposed to be, or just like this was generally more of a setup with the intention that they were absolutely going to come back at some point if the show had like kept going as it was going. um like they were never going to bring him back for like what we ended up getting with Children of Earth and Miracle Day, because I don't think they'd be able to sustain that. But like I have to believe this was like they were intentionally setting them up to come back and just never
Yeah,
got the
potential
chance
season
to.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. Um and it's sort of like with Sarah Jane Adventures, where they were setting up stuff near what they didn't realize was going to be the end of the show, that just kind of got left unanswered by virtue of the show having to end. Um, so you kind of wish they would have written this more with like, okay, let's treat it as if they're going to be one-off villains and not feel like, oh yeah, this is a bankable idea that's definitely going to go over well. Which also might have been the other thing, is maybe this episode didn't go over as well, and maybe the ratings were kind of meh. So they realized, oh well, we're dropping this now. Like if we wanted to do anything with them, we're not going to. Um, but yeah, like generally, yeah, I feel like of like agreeing with the consensus that like this could have been better if either given more time or certain things were reworked and this and that. But even then, I feel like the acting pulls it up enough in certain parts for me to lean slightly more positive on this uh than some of Torchwood's other like episodes that would fall into this sort of a category. And that's about all I've got.
All right, so my thoughts. I thought this was pretty solid watching it. There's definitely some of the story issues we mentioned, which I definitely think fixing them would improve the episode. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was bad without them. As we've talked about a lot, the front end, the first act got probably enough time for what the story wanted. And then the second and third act were kind of, oh, we don't have enough time or budget for this. And they didn't really adjust it for that. I'm not sure if an episode director has enough power to make changes like that. I don't really know how the TV industry works in that way. Certainly the producer could have. Um,
Yeah.
but either way, somebody could have made a call to make an adjustment to this. Or maybe they just decided, hey, this is mostly a character-centric episode focusing on Yanto. It's okay that we don't have all these other things as long as all the important Yanto scenes are there. Which, if they were going for that, I think they were successful. I don't think any issue with Yanto's role in this story needed to be expanded in any way. I think that those issues were fine. The episode definitely could have been better. Again, if it were either half an hour longer, or if they had extensively been like, no, this plot doesn't fit into this format. We need to kind of tweak it a bit. I disagree with Rand about the villains being stilted. I thought that they were just I thought they were other than kind of that inconsistency between the literal first two scenes of the one character, I thought they were, engaging and effective for what they were doing.
It's just that they didn't have development enough.
Right. I wish they had more scenes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
And maybe that's why
all.
you meant by stilted, just not quite phrasing it right. I don't know.
But that's all I have to say that hasn't been already said. We've already said a lot of stuff about it.
Mm-hmm.
So on to the ratings. Rand says 3.5. Matt?
I'm giving this one at least a 4.
4.0. Alex?
So something I did forget to mention is that how the hell does the sun afford this damn warehouse? But in any way, I'm gonna agree with Matt and also give this a 4.
How does the son of a family who is able to purchase and refurbish an old cinema have money for a warehouse?
For his apartment, yeah, that's
Sure.
really weird.
Like
I'm just saying his parents are clearly rich.
Maybe.
Or if not rich, at least I guess middle class. Well, upper middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll agree with the two of you. This fits in right with the Day of the Death as a 4.0. Which puts us as an average of 3.88 out of 5. Okay.
And Randy is our low baller. Or...
Yep.
Every party needs a pooper. That's why we invited you.
So this is on par with no Torchwood episodes. If you look at just spin-offs, it was on par with the Jago and Lightfoot revival, Acts 1 and 2, and Big Finish the Condemned. The nearest spin-off, the nearest televised spin-offs to compare it to. Well, since we don't have another spin-off on par with it, it was on par with The Gardens of Dead, The Doctor's Daughter, and The Crotons. The next spin-offs that were better than it that were Canine and Company, Sarah Jane Adventures, Invasion of the Bane, Canine Jaws of Orthrus, and there's a Torchwood episode, Captain Jack Harkness at 4.0, and not as good as this week's episode, Sarah Jane Adventures, Eye of the Gorgon. Come on.
Okay.
Luckily, there's Torchwood Adam and Torchwood Dead Man Walking, which are both from this season.
Yeah.
All right, so that wraps up our thoughts on From Out of the Rain. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode if you've watched it. And don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports every week. Or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we're finished with Torchwood. And in fact, we're finished with the first 2 seasons. So for now, we move on to K9 with Dream Eaters, written by Jim Noble and starring Philippa Coulthard as Georgie Turner, Keegan Joyce as Starkey, Daniel Weber as Darius Pike, Robert Maloney as Professor Alastair Griffin, and John Leeson as the voice of K9. We'll see you then.
Oh, Lordy. Good luck to you all. I'll try to remember to write my comments as soon as I see it.